Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Thanks to Kojiko TV, your TV, this is our chance to talk with members of our community about what matters most to Oakville. The most important thing to Oakville is our livability, and a crucial part of our livability is the good work that United Way does to support the social safety net that helps our residents to keep from falling through to greater trouble when they're in trouble. And joining us today are Brenda DeLauder from the United Way, Melissa Pollard from Big Brothers Big Sisters, BBBS, and Karen Milligan from Ontario 211 Services. And I'm thinking, Karen, that 211 is newer to our viewers than BBBS or the United Way. So let's start with you and clear up the mystery. What is 211? And if I dial it, what happens?
Absolutely. So 211 is a three-digit phone number similar to 911, but really for non-urgent needs. So anything from health to social to government services at a local, regional, or provincial and federal level as well. So really it's a navigation service that helps people identify and then access the programs and services they need.
Are
We
there
are
other
available. Oh, sorry, we're
are
we're
there
available.
other N11
Yeah,
numbers that you can dial?
absolutely. So aside from 911, there is 311 in many communities, which gives you access to municipal services, bylaw, road repairs, garbage pickup, things of that nature. And then in some provinces, although it's not in Ontario yet, there's also 811 that gives access to health services.
And in Halton, 211 connects further than municipal. Is that the deal?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a host of programs and services that are offered by, in some cases, community organizations. But then, of course, as you're aware, there's federal benefits available, there's provincial programs available, certainly in the health domain and education, which are provincially mandated. So really, 211's database contains all of the services that might be available to serve a resident of any community.
So should we move 311 to you?
It's actually been a request that we've had before, but actually 311 is quite a different kind of service in that it's really things that are more transactional. Where when you call 211, our navigators are specially trained to understand and assess what somebody's human services needs are. So what is it that they're struggling with? What's happening in their life? And we do a bit of probing to understand what underlying issues might be there as well. And so then we're able to connect with them with the broadest range of services available.
Well, that sounds almost like a concierge or a maitre d' or
Yeah, for sure. Yes, just in the social services world, I'd say.
a really personalized service, if I understood it correctly.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Melissa, uh, a little bit about BBBS. I'm trying to show off that I can say three B's in it.
I appreciate that. I stumble sometimes, so I appreciate that you can do it. So a little
So,
bit, yeah.
how many clients do you have in Oakville?
Yeah, so we serve a little over 300 young people, and that was actually through the pandemic. So in a year where services, so many of our services and our access to services were decreased, we're really proud of the fact we don't really rely on brick and mortar. We're a human connection organization, and so we were able to maintain and support, yeah, over 300 young people in Oakville.
Well, I first encountered BBBS, it must be 22 years ago,
Mhm.
uh, when I was a kids hockey coach. I had there was a member of the team who had a big brother who was helping fill in some gaps in that boy's life.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the organization has a long, long standing history and community. And I think it's nice that we all have a personal connection. And I think what I'm most excited about is we continue to innovate and sort of reflect the needs of young people and what we're hearing from them in terms of what they could use as supports. So in addition to the traditional one-to-one matched relationship that you sort of described, that mentoring relationship, we also have a variety of school-based and group programs to sort of meet young people in various populations where they're at.
Now, Brenda, it seems to me that United Way supports hundreds of helping agencies, and I've often gotten the impression that none of them might exist without United Way support. How important is United Way to 211 and to BBBS, just to pick on two?
So locally here in Oakville, supporting about 46 programs and tens of thousands of friends and neighbors in Oakville, just under 40,000 actually. 211 is a tremendous program because it really helps people access anonymously programs. Quite often, one of the barriers to access is stigma. And so individuals can pick up the phone or go to the website and search for their needs. What's really interesting about 211 is that quite often when an individual comes forward for help with one program, they quite often require multiple supports. And so 211 is able to help individuals and households navigate the system.
All right.
And Big Brothers Big Sisters, longstanding program partner of ours, and a really integral program, especially since the onset of this global pandemic. You know, we're seeing that youth and younger individuals are really struggling, and there's a lot of talk about the shadow pandemic of mental illness with youth, and you know, the stats are staggering. I'll let Melissa, you can dig into those numbers a little bit more. Why is investing in youth really important? Well, we know that investing in youth can really break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. It helps ignite the economy. It reduces stress on the healthcare system and the judicial system. So really, really great, important programs here.
Sounds like it makes a place more livable.
Absolutely.
So I'm interested to know whether the load at BBBS and the call volume at 211 has changed over the last 18 months, or is it 19 months now? But anyway, you know, the pandemic, which may be becoming endemic, what's been the impact on your load levels?
Maybe I'll go first, and then I'll turn it over to you for what you've seen. But from a 211 perspective, we saw our call volumes double in some cases in the early part of the pandemic. And you know, we immediately, of course, like everybody else, had people set up to work from home. And there was very little service interruption at that point because, you know, we already had sort of internet-based systems, so people could work from home. But all to say that call volume in the early days doubled in some areas, and it continues to be high. We're still experiencing sort of a 40% increase in our call volume year over year compared to pre-pandemic. So it's had quite an impact in terms of the overall volume, but also, you know, we've increased the number of partners that we're working with at a community level to try and sort of connect what that person's needs are, and in particular, any unmet needs that we identify. So through the course of the conversation, of course, sometimes we're not able to identify a service for an individual because either it doesn't exist, or they can't afford to pay for it, or they have no transportation to get to the program. So there's a lot of problem solving that happens, but in some cases we do identify something that's an unmet need. And then of course we're engaging with partners at a local level to try and meet that need in creative ways. So we did that quite a bit during the pandemic, over and above sort of that incoming call volume.
Well, it sounds to me like your, the sort of frontline role that you have there would make your you're a source of intelligence for the Halton regional government and our community safety and well-being plan, because that's a living policy
Yep.
that evolves as we discover needs. And so
Absolutely.
you're not already hooked up with that. We've got to make sure you're hooked up with that.
For sure. I will follow up with Brenda on that, but we are actually engaging with several communities around their community safety and well-being plans. So, and you're absolutely right. I think last year we had about 350,000 interactions across the province. And of course, from Oakville residents, that represented about 1,500 contacts specifically. But out of those contacts, we do collect information about what the needs and unmet needs are, and demographic information, right? So we can pinpoint exactly where are their services lacking, or where do we need transportation and things of that nature.
That's great. That'd be very valuable. The Commissioner of Social Services, Alex Sarchuk, would be happy to hear about your information, as he's sort of the head guru of our community safety.
Excellent.
And Melissa, how about BBBS's load during the pandemic?
Yeah, so I think we all know intuitively, we've heard that it takes a village, right, to raise a young person. And so many of us have lost our village, right, through this pandemic, and especially the young people and the families that we serve, regardless of what their familial structure looks like. We've noticed an increase in need and an increase of calls, because Big Brothers Big Sisters does serve as part of that village for these families. And the families have been communicating quite clearly, two things in particular. So mental health challenges are exacerbated, right? So for families that were already seeing a disproportionate impact of mental health challenges, things related to social, emotional competence, they're seeing that. In addition, which we again, you talk about a livable community, is school disengagement, right? And so while so many of us have talked about the conversion of education to a virtual format, for a lot of our young people in our community, that's not a fit for them. And so we're seeing that schools are overwhelmed, but the families are overwhelmed. The parental structure, the guardianship structure, whatever that looks like, they are at their capacity. And so to manage that, in addition to supporting the education of your young person, it can be incredibly challenging, right?
Yeah. So Brenda, one of the things that the regional council and the town council care very much about in terms of maximizing our livability is making sure that there's a inclusiveness in our community, and that people are not left out or left behind. And United Way obviously works hard at making sure that nobody's left behind. But on the inclusiveness issue, does United Way run into issues there? Do you have any problems with that in terms of dealing with the different agencies, or do all of our helping agencies already get it, so to speak?
So we refer to it as a network of support, and many of the programs are linked to each other, and many of the programs are helping the same households and same individuals. So we are working in collaboration, and in addition to the agencies and the programs, United Way also links in and works closely with government, with labor, with corporate Canada, etc. When it comes to isolation, though, as individuals and residents of this community, we've seen a drastic increase in isolation just due to the pandemic itself, and especially for seniors and people living with disabilities. So in addition to ensuring a healthy network of support and lots of collaboration, we also invest in isolation supports for individuals and households.
So on a related note of equity and diversity, we've seen a number of different cultures moving into our community over the last many decades, and some of them have very specific special needs. How does United Way deal with that? I mean, I'll give you an example. We now provide there's groups that want women only swimming, for example, and so what kind of work does United Way have to do to accommodate really culturally specific requirements for respect and recognition?
Mhm. So I just first want to start by saying that this global health pandemic has really exacerbated inequities in our community and has disproportionately impacted uh, friends and neighbors who are experiencing poverty or marginalized and underrepresented groups. So we apply an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens to everything that we do, including all of our investment strategies, and making sure that everyone has equitable access specifically to their needs is really, really important to us. We invest in and research high impact programs, and we rely on evidence and volunteers who help us assess the impact of these programs to ensure that everyone has their needs met. It's
Well,
very broad. It's very broad.
yeah, and you got quite a vote of confidence from the federal government when they asked you to distribute emergency funding. How did that come about, and how did it go?
So when the pandemic hit, the federal government had said that they wanted to invest $350 million across the country into social programs to support charities, and in order to and programs, not for profits. In order for those funds to be disseminated, the government identified 3 groups. One was being the United Way, because we have such a deep local connection to the local programs, and we know that local issues require local solutions. We also work closely with the community foundations as well as the Red Cross to disseminate those funds. And we did that all in a matter of weeks. And the reason being was because a lot of the programs had to change. You know, we're tired of hearing the term pivot, but it's such a suitable a term because these programs and organizations really had to adapt, and they had to do it quickly, and all while seeing more than a 40% increase in demand for supports, and many of them seeing more than a 30% decrease in capacity, specifically charities who could no longer fundraise with their events, who heavily relied on events for funds. So we really had to maneuver quickly.
So on that note, Melissa, I understood for ages, I've understood that the United Way proposition to helping agencies was that it's sort of a unified appeal to prevent there being 300 appeals, or at least part of the year, but that in another part of the year, individual agencies can and do go out and fundraise on their own. And I'm wondering if the pandemic has hurt that portion of your revenues and made you more dependent upon the success of United Way.
Yeah, so I'd say the United Way is a huge portion of, the investment into our operations, right? So ensuring that we can provide those services. Most people aren't aware of the fact that I think because of the longstanding history that we do raise our entire budget. So we rely on local community investment to exist. Whereas often people assume that it'll be here forever because it's been here for over 100 years. So what I'd say is that investment is critical. We are I know I talked about the uptake in clients, the uptake in families reaching out to us. We are getting close to capacity, right? Based on our need to have, trained social service workers and social workers supporting this programming, right? So I think, organizations like the United Way and their investment into our operations is what allows us to help the community thrive.
So I'm not sure I understood.
Yeah.
Has the pandemic hurt your own fundraising efforts and made?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the reality is we don't have the opportunity of some of our traditional formats, right? To go out and to meet people, to see people, to help them understand our mission and vision, and to help them make a determination of where they'd like to direct, their social investment dollars is the way that I look at it. And so we've seen a decline, right, in our revenue streams, specifically through the pandemic. We all know that we received some subsidies, right? We were that heavily and deeply impacted that we received subsidies, but that's also a portion of the shadow pandemic, right? So the impact to the young people, communities, marginalized populations, but also the fact that those subsidies aren't there anymore, right? And so we're still seeing the residual impact of lack of fund development or fundraising opportunities, coupled with not the same supports, right, that were accessible at the height of the pandemic. As you said, now we're moving into endemic phase.
So Brenda, every year's campaign, as far as I can remember, raises the goal of how much you're trying to raise. What's the target this year?
Our target this year is a lofty, and it's very ambitious. It's $10.8 million. And gosh, we know that every penny is going to count this year, every penny. And it's going to take all of us to rally together to raise these critical funds for these vital programs that people rely on, but that also rely on one another.
Well, now, I want to talk about your various fundraising activities, and I need you to, we really need you to guide us through that. I understand that Walk This Way is the theme. Maybe, do you want to explain all that?
Yeah, so we have a virtual walk and movement-a-thon that's happening right now as part of our kickoff. Our campaign kickoff happened last week, which we were so excited to be out there at Town Hall raising the flag like we do every year. It's our tradition, and that's so the Walk This Way event is happening right now. We also have some other events. Happy to report that your golf tournament, the annual Mayor's Golf Tournament at Glen Abbey, which is going to be next week, October 5th, is completely sold out. We have a wait list for that. What a testament to this community, like stepping up. We also have a Show Your Local Love Day, which is a volunteership day that individuals can become involved in, and that involves, pulling together kits and packaging food. There are different opportunities. But when it comes to giving, there are really some simple ways to get involved. One is to rally your workplace and do a workplace campaign. The other is to support one of our events, and they're all listed on our website at uwhh.ca. And then also to make a family gift or an individual gift.
So at my fundraiser, my beloved Glen Abbey Golf Course United Way tournament, I'm planning to ride a golf cart around and annoy the golfers by interrupting their game to say hello and play Ask Me Anything. And I would be willing to take volunteers like Karen and Melissa and any others to take turns riding with me and engage with the golfers and maybe motivate them to donate more after their golf game. Do you think anybody would like to do that?
Are you sure you want to do that, Mayor Burton? You want to spend that much time with me? I know I'd be happy to.
Well, I'm throwing. I was so charmed by all three of you that I throw the idea out there. And I would be delighted to do it.
I think.
And so far, the golf tournament has raised $40,000 more than its original target. So we should just optimize this as much as we can. Let's ride that momentum.
And the golf cart all the way.
Nobody likes it when I brag, but I have been a prodigious fundraiser for charity in our town over the last 15 years, and I'm proud of it. And I always try to, get higher on the hill, move the ball further down the field, and all those kinds of cliches. So let's go the extra mile. It won't be crowded.
Yeah, I think that's worth bragging about.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the need is great this year, and I think Brenda's already spoken to it, as has Melissa, but we see that people are really going to struggle coming out of the pandemic. Mental health is a big issue, as well as financial security, and even in some cases retraining and re-employment. So we know the need is great. For sure.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you being interested in the idea. You'll add a lot of credibility to the golf cart as I.
Yeah.
So
we appreciate the offer. I think any opportunity we have, I think Brenda spoke to it, you know, we're two of many organizations that support this community. And so any opportunity we get to support this village for Oakville, we're happy to support.
Well, any doors or minds that we can open wider together is bound to be good for the people that need our services. So I'm all in with you. What are your post-pandemic, if there is such a thing, and I hope there is, what are your hopes and dreams for your organizations? Let's start with Karen, because you're new, or new to me anyway.
It's okay. I mean, I guess a couple of things. From a 211 perspective, as you noted, not everybody knows about 211. And so I think, you know, again, the more people who are aware of it and can access that navigation assistance, then hopefully that means more people are connecting to the help that they need. And the other thing I would say too is just, I think what the pandemic has taught us is that, you know, we've been able to break down some of the barriers to collaboration in some, you know, across many different domains. So I think I'm encouraged to see that. And I think, as Melissa has said, it does take a village. So my hope is that moving forward, there is less of that operating in silos and more of operating as a community to address needs.
Those are great goals. Brenda, what about the United Way mothership?
Right now, our primary focus is on rebuilding. Rebuild. We know that there's a very long road ahead. And we just want to continue to stand, you know, together with this community, and to continue to see the resilience and the graciousness of residents who live here, but also to really tear down those barriers of discrimination and racism and the systemic inequities that we're seeing, it all combined with you know, activating on our new investment strategy, which is so robust and evidence-based. It's really strategic and exciting.
Well, it's good to hear. It reminds me of the criteria that we adopted for the Halton Community Investment Fund, which is another source of funding for these helping agencies. I want to thank you very much for sharing all of this today. And I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope we'll see you next time.